All right, so streaming is on. So I'm going to start with talking about two homework assignments because one is due today, right? Okay, so you guys turn it in. Um, so we're going to have two more homework assignments due in a week. So if you have any questions about those two, you can use Monday to ask additional questions. I do have office hours every day as well. Okay, so if you want to stop by and talk about the homework assignments, that's cool with me. So one homework assignment is GCF. The other one is semester project document 1. So I'll talk about these two first before we talk about any additional material in the class. The first one is GCF, where you have to use App Inventor to write an app to find the greatest common factor of two numbers. Do you guys still remember what is GCF? Okay. If you cannot remember, there's a little brief explanation in the notes itself. But you can also go to YouTube and just enter GCF tutorial. I mean, there are tons of material that can explain what it is. You can go to Khan Academy. Okay, pretty sure that has some material on GCS as well. So what this app is going to have is one single screen. Okay, it's going to have two text boxes on the screen, and you can limit those text boxes to numbers only, which kind of makes sense because we're trying to find GCF only from numbers. And a single button, I want you to kind of label the button find GCF instead of, text for button 1. That's kind of a little bit too crude. Okay, so the user interface is just this much, not a whole lot. When the button is clicked, you need to find out, how to calculate the greatest common factor of the numbers already entered into the text boxes. And then you want to use a notify alert message. We'll go through that later today in class to report the GCF. So it's not going to be a dialog box. The number or the answer is going to pop up on the screen for maybe a second or so, and then it fades away. That's what the quote-unquote alert message is going to look like. And I want you to also perform some kind of error checking. If at least one text box is empty, I want you to use the show message dialog box from a notifier to tell the end user that, well, both boxes need to have numbers, so they cannot be blank. And if at least one box has a value that is 0 or less, I want you to also show a message to tell the end user to enter positive values only. Is that okay? I mean, does everybody understand what error checking you need to do? Yes?
Yeah, I understand. I just have a question in general about these homework assignments. Are they going to be looked at by you or automated? And the reason I ask is like if
It cannot be
yeah,
automated, so it has to be done by hand.
okay.
Yeah.
So are you okay with if I don't want to say enter both numbers and I say enter both numbers please?
Yeah,
If it's
sure.
like negative or if I change the color?
As long as I can read it, it's
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So the logic to find the GCF requires a loop. Okay. So you can make it very fancy, and do factoring and that kind of stuff. But the easiest way to do it is to pick one of the two numbers, check whether it is already a factor of the other number. If not, keep decreasing the number until it becomes a common factor of the two. Okay. And in today's class, I will talk about the mod operator, or the modulus operator, which you need to use in order to determine whether a number is a factor of another number. So there are a few things I need to talk about in today's lecture that you will need in order to complete this homework assignment. And this is just an example, of what greatest common factor means. The GCF of 12 and 15 is 3. The GCF of 3 and 5, both are prime numbers, is 1. Because, as prime numbers, they do not share any common factors. The GCF of 7 and 49 is 7, because 7 itself is a factor of 49. And then the GCF of 14 and 14 is 14, because 14 is divisible by 14, and 14 is also divisible by 14. So is that okay? I'm just trying to make you understand or remember, the definition of GCF, and I'm including two extreme cases. This one is extreme, this one is extreme, This one is kind of interesting because one of the number itself is already a factor of the other one. And then this one is pretty common. I mean, you have a smaller number that is the common factor. So are we good so far with the homework assignment, the description anyway? We good? All right. So this is the first homework assignment where you actually have to do some programming. And you have a second homework assignment, which is not about programming. It's about planning. So with this second homework assignment, which is semester project document 1, is a way for you to propose what you want to do for the rest of this semester. Okay, so at the end of the semester, I want you to write an app that you want to write. Okay, so I don't want to give you an assignment like, okay, let's write an app to keep track of blah, 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 and you have no interest in that subject area whatsoever. So I want you to do something that's fun or useful to you, not just some textbook homework assignment. But in order to do that, I need you to propose to me what you're planning to do, so I can kind of read your project proposal and see how I can help you along the way. So the first thing you need to write is, why do you want to develop this particular program with this particular app? Is the app itself useful to you? Is it fun for you? Or is it the development process that seems to be challenging and you want to take on that challenge? Those are all valid reasons, okay? Because you can write an app that doesn't do anything really useful, except it just generates really fancy looking fractal pictures. Okay, it's not particularly useful, but you say, okay, but I really want to look into generating fractal images based on how you shake the phone, which way it's oriented and stuff like that. Hey, that's kind of cool. So the second portion, or the second section, is the part where you have to explain to me, what does it do? So the first one says, is asking, why do you want to choose this project? And then the second one, is you have to tell me more information of what exactly does it do, okay? Or at least what you propose that it's going to do. Certain things we're not going to be able to do. If you want to write a first-person, shooting game, can't do that in the App Inventor, okay? If it's one of those, sprite type, overlooking, a character jumping around, we can do some of that. Okay, but anything that makes use of 3D rendering and stuff like that, we can't do. Okay. The third section, basically, I want you to go through all the components in App Inventor, and you need to tell me what kind of resources you will need to get this app to work. Okay. For instance, if you need to communicate with a web type resource using an API, then you need to use the HTTP or HTTPS connection, which is basically saying you need a web component to get it to work. If you need to know the current location, then you need a GPS component, or the component corresponding to location. Do you need to store anything locally? Do you need to store a high score? Do you want to do it locally to the app, to the device, or do you want it to be remote or global so that everybody who has the app installed can compete with each other? So you have to kind of look through all of those components already in App Inventor and kind of identify which one you think you will need for your app. Is that okay? All right. If you're not sure, you can just say, well, I'm not sure, I might need this. Okay, that's perfectly okay. And then the last one is for you to kind of anticipate, what do you think is going to be the main challenge of writing this app? Okay, is it going to be the programming technique? Is there a particular algorithm that is recursive and you don't know whether App Inventor can do it? Or is it because, okay, for this one to work, I need, precise timing measurement and stuff like that. I'm not really sure whether App Inventor can do it. So whatever you think is going to be your main challenge, I want you to mention that. Because, I can look at it and go like, this may be an issue. Or I can look at it and go like, nah, this is fine. I know how to do it. Okay. So I'm not going to hold you accountable at this point for what you're proposing. This is our first planning document. All I want to do is just to get some information about what you plan to do. I can assess, is it practical? Can we get it done within a semester? What would be the main challenges? And this also helps me plan the rest of the semester. What topics to go over in what order? So it's for many purposes. So try to include as much information as you can because it's not only going to help you to get it started, but it's going to help me to do some planning as well. So after I read your plan, your proposal, I'm going to reply to you to basically address any potential issues. If someone proposes to me, I'm just going to do the Costco counter, then I would say no, that is a little bit too simple. You have to make it more fancy. So go go back to the drawing board. Okay. If someone said, I want to write, some super duper, you know, app that's kind of like Uber, I would say, well, that may be a little bit too much. Okay, so depending on what you're proposing, I'll give you feedback about basically I want to make sure that you can get it done by the end of the semester. Is that okay? All right. So this one, you don't have to turn in a file. When you work on it, it will open up an HTML editor below the description, and all you have to do is to keep typing on it. Until the due date, you can just save your article and continue to work on it the next time you sign in. Okay, so you don't have to turn it in like right away. You can just work on it bit by bit. But do turn in before 9 a.m. next week, next Wednesday. Is that okay? So you got a due date of up to 1 week. And I do want you guys to spend some time to think about it first. You can write it out, you can edit it and go like, okay, I need to go back and change that. That's perfectly okay. Are we good so far? All right, cool. So you have 2 assignments due next Wednesday. I don't think it's too much. Okay, one is the first one is GCF. Yeah, we just talked about it before you came in. Yep, I start on time, but it's getting recorded, so everything is being captured. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll be at the lab, so you can go over that and ask me questions, at that time. Yep. Cool. Okay. So what we'll do today is we'll continue with what we started on Monday. We did not even get a chance to get into loops. We were talking a little bit about notifier, the text box, the text notifier. So the question was, where did it go? I just entered something, but where did it go? Okay, so we have to answer that question and also other things about the notifier. I have already included a proposed list of topics to go over probably next week. Okay, I don't think we can get to these today. Maybe a little bit, but not a whole lot. So this is about JSON, JSON, and how data is represented and how you can format data into a text representation. So that's kind of the best way I can explain it. JSON, this is not a typo. JSON is the correct spelling for JSON in this case because JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, which is a way for JavaScript, the programming language, to encode objects into text for transmission over HTTP and also to be able to receive a reply where the answer or the result is a complicated thing. So it's really useful in many ways. I will talk about how JSON encodes a string, a number, and a list. Okay, but within a list we got KV, which stands for key value pair. Okay, which is a very crucial concept in the JSON representation. And if you can have one single KV pair, then we can also have a list of KV pairs. Okay. We'll talk about all of these next week, but I just want to give you a preview of what we'll be talking about. So we'll talk about how do we encode something into JSON format and how do we decode something that's already encoded into JSON format back to the list format. And then we'll talk about the applications of JSON. It has many really useful applications in App Inventor programming, But in general, even if you're just programming in JavaScript, for some, mundane tasks or automating something on a browser end, JSON is still a very useful representation. So I think not only for App Inventor or only for mobile applications, it's just a good thing to understand what JSON is and how it can be used. So that's for next week. So this is just a little preview of what we'll be talking about next week. So getting back to App Inventor, we'll go back to the app that we wrote or we started to write in the previous class. And let's see, App Inventor. And here we go to create apps. Use the same account, so this way I'm just resuming the program that I started on Monday. And I think this is the one. Let me just double check. Yep, so this is the one with the notifier. Let me just run the app first, okay, using an emulator so that we are kind of getting reacquainted with the program that is kind of partially written, not entirely. Okay. So this part is kind of what I need to do because I'm using Linux. If you're using Windows and you have the emulator installed, you don't need to go through all this trouble, okay? It's run emulator. So I'm using the way where the emulator is being run independently, and I'm going to use the command line to install the app. Okay, so this is the most general way of running an app and and restarting an app. Okay, so the emulator is up and running, and then the way we do this is to go to build, and then click on app and save APK to my computer. Did any one of you try this method, out of classroom? No? Okay. If your app has multiple screens, you eventually will have to do it this way, because the other method of developing, does not restart the app from the beginning every single time. So with the multiple screen, applications, you really need to use this method to get it to work. So I put it into my temp folder, save, and then go back to the command line. So let me pick one. And I'm going to make this bigger just so that it's easier for you guys to read what I'm typing here. So even though this is Linux, what you need to do is about the same, even though it's not exactly the same. So the first thing you need to do is to find out where the App Inventor emulator package is installed. So in my case, it is installed in this particular path, which is kind of obscure. In your case, it's going to be in program files if you use the standard development package, but if you download the zip file, then it's going to be wherever you unzip the file. So in your case, it's going to be on the thumb drive, inside that folder. And to run any type of command, we have to go into the subfolder called Commands for App Inventor. Okay, your prompt in DOS or in Windows is not going to look like this. Okay, but the idea would still be the same. So if you have any specific question of how to get this done in Windows, we can address those questions in the lab. That's why we have a lab component to this class. So now the first thing I need to do is to say, okay, what devices are connected? And we did this last time too. So it's really just a matter of once we get used to it, we can run these commands relatively quickly. So the next thing we need to do is to install with a -R. The -R basically means if it is already installed, reinstall. Okay, that's what the -R is representing. So, and then you have to supply the path to the file. So in my case, it's under my temp folder. It's called test notifier.apk. So in your case, if you're using Windows, most likely the path is going to be /users / whatever your username is / downloads / and then the APK file name. So it's going to be longer. But once you know where it is, this command can be repeated, which is the nice thing. So you really just have to kind of type the long one once, and then from that point on, you can just repeat the same command over and over again. All right, so it takes a little bit of time because it's really running the installer on this side, inside the emulator. So I have to unlock the emulator, go into the test here, and then locate test notifier, which is this one here. Click it, and now you can see the app running in the emulator. Click the button. It changes the color, which means by the time this dialog box is displayed, we are already out of that event handler. So the button click event handler is already done at this time. So I can just type something here. I cannot actually. I lied. I actually have to use the on-screen keyboard to type something. So when I'm done typing something, I click OK. So now the question is, where did that text go? How do I get it back? Okay. So to answer that question, let's go back to the browser. This time we go to the blocks. Okay. So we know what this block is going to do. It's just resetting the background to the default color, and the last block is changing the background color to this purplish color. So the fact that by the time the dialog box shows up, the background is already changed tells me that this is what we call a non-blocking operation. Okay, so let me say that one more time. It's called a non-blocking operation, which means its only job is to show the dialog box, but it does not wait until you type something and then press the OK button. Is that okay? All right. So it only shows the dialog box, then the program moves on and changes the background color. And this entire event handler for click is done. So after I type something and then press the OK button in the dialog box, where is that text going? It is going to this place. So when you go to notifier 1, you will see that there are a few event handlers. AfterTextInput is the one that captures the actual input. Okay? So let me drag that box out. And let's see, we'll position it over here. Okay. All right. So this particular event called AfterTextInput is raised after you press the OK button in the text entering dialog box. Okay. So you can now specify code here because response as a parameter is basically the text that was entered into the text box. Is that concept okay or not? Okay. All right. So we're going to put some code into here so that we know that the response is received, okay? And also to confirm that this block executes. So the first thing we want to do is to repeat this block here, and we just want to switch the background color back to normal. Okay. Now, I personally don't like to write a lot of new code before retesting the program, because if I have a theory and just say that after I press the enter key, this block gets control, I'll just test it the way it is. I'm not even doing anything with response yet. Okay, I just want to know that the event after text input is in fact raised when you press the OK button in the dialog box. That's all I want to do. Is that okay? No? Okay. So let me run the program first. Okay, so maybe running the program will help explain the concept. So I'm going to go back to build. So from here on, I'm just going to use this method to build the APK and then rerun the program. All right. So you might want to configure your browser to ask you before saving the file, because this way you can save it under the same name. And as a result, you don't need to change your command line, so you don't have to retype the whole thing, or at least, change anything on the command line. So this is the emulator, and this is the command line interface. So at this point, this is all I need to do. Up arrow on the keyboard, and then press the enter key. Because the file name is preserved, it is at the same place, even though it is updated, it's still at the same place, same path. So I only have to figure out the long path here once, and then after that, it's just up button, enter, up button, enter. Question?
What do you mean up arrow?
On the keyboard.
Okay.
Because on the keyboard in the command line interface, up arrow means repeat the previous command, which is a very handy feature because you can, if you press up button several times, it will just kind of go up in the history of all the command line commands that you have entered, so it can repeat a previous command that way. So I press the enter key, the app will get reinstalled, but as the app is reinstalled, it will close the one that's already running, and then after that process is done, I can go click on a test notifier again. Okay, so let me go click on a test notifier. Okay, so the only difference I have made with this program is now I specify a AfterTextInput event handler, which doesn't even do anything with the text. It just turns the background color back to normal. Okay, so let's run it. So it runs about the same. You click it, it changes the background color. It gives you the dialog box that allows you to type something in it. Okay, I'm just going to give it some random stuff. And then I press OK here. Okay, so as I click the OK button, observe the background color of the screen itself. Okay, click. It goes back to normal. So that means that block got control after I click the OK button in the text input dialog box. Is that okay? Yep.
Where did the color change?
So the color change is because of here. So let me switch back to the blocks again. So the color is changed by this statement here. So it's a visual confirmation that I can see and say that yes, I got control now.
Now I see it.
Yep.
Okay.
So at this point, if you want to do something about the response, feel free. Is that okay?
Yes.
So I'm going to use another feature of the notifier and make use of the response. Okay. So let me go to the notifier, and this time I will use the alert method. So show alert, this one here, and click it over here. And you can see I have one warning message right here. So I want to show warning, and you can see it's warning about this one. So keep an eye on both warnings and errors. If you have an error, the program is not going to work. Okay, but if you have a warning, the program is still going to work, except App Inventor saying, hey, you might want to look at this. So in this case, it says you should fill all of the sockets with blocks, because we have the notice socket being empty, which basically means it's not going to show anything, because what you want to show is an empty string by default. Okay, so what I want the screen to show is you just said quote, and then repeat what you typed in the text box, end quote. Okay, so I just want the app to do it that way. So what we need to do now is to go to string or text and use join as a block, because I need to join several pieces into one. And of course, the warning is now moved onto the join block because the join block has empty sockets now. The first thing in the join block is going to be just a literal text here. And I'm just going to type, you just said, open quote. Okay. And then the second thing is I would I would click response and then get response and put it here. And then I need one more block as the end. So this is how you can extend a join block to have more sockets. By default, it comes with 2. But if you need more, just drag this extra quote unquote string into here, and it will give you extra blocks. Okay? It's a pretty handy feature. Yes?
The response, is that stored anywhere else, like on the left? Or is it only on the...
You mean this one here?
Yeah.
It is basically a parameter. It is equivalent to a parameter in normal programming. So you can treat it as a local variable that is already initialized with a value. But it is not a global.
If you didn't have a text input, just had OK or cancel, would it also hold that response?
Well, there's control ones for that, right?
Hmm?
There's control boxes for when you have a cancel or an OK.
Yes, so I specified we do not have a cancel button, but if you do have a cancel button, then it will not trigger after text input. So if you click cancel in the text entering a dialog box, then it's not going to trigger this. But if you press the OK button when the text input box is actually empty, then response would be an empty string. So that means we'll see open double quote, close double quote with nothing in between. So let me finish the literal text first, and then we'll take a look at the behavior of this new program. So I'm going to duplicate this, stash it here. So what I need to type here is first a double quote, because I need to close the open double quote. Okay, and that's it. This is all I'm going to do. So are we good so far? With understanding what the code is specifying. Okay, so are we ready to run it? Okay, so let's go ahead and run it then. So we go to build, save as APK on the computer. Okay, switch back to the command line. Repeat the previous command to update the app basically. And then watch the app close. And after the installation, we can start the app again. There we go. So now we start the app again. Click the button. It asks me, it changes the background color, asks me for text input. So I'm going to type cool, COOL, and then press the OK button. And it says, you just said cool. And it fades away. So that's what an alert message is going to do. Is it appears on the screen for a few, maybe 2 seconds or so, and then it just kind of fades away. Are we good so far? Okay. So by adding a little bit more feature to this program, I have just illustrated, the different ways you can utilize a notifier. Are we good so far? Do you guys remember? Yeah, go ahead.
And we can use that same notifier on one screen, so we only need one notifier on the screen.
That is correct. Yep. So on any particular screen, you just need one notifier component if you need a notifier. But between screens, they cannot share components. So if you have multiple screens in your app, then you need one notifier per screen that you need notification for. Are we good so far? Are there any questions? Nope. Yep, go ahead.
I forget, so global variables, can they be seen from screen to screen?
No. Global variables are not entirely global because they're only global within a screen, but they are invisible between screens.
It's like a scene.
Yeah, so between screens, the communication is going to be a little bit tricky, and that's one thing that we can address after next week, because next week we're going to talk about JSON, how we format complex objects into a string, because you can pass a string from one screen to the next, but that's your limitation. You can only pass one string. Yeah, yeah, but with JSON, it's like, okay, a string is all I need. So are we good so far? All right, cool. All right, so I think now we can start to talk about loops, okay? Because we are pretty much done with notifier. Does anyone want to know what that log thing is going to do and how to look at the log through ADB?
I would like to know.
Let's check it out. Let's check it out then. All right, so we're going to go back to this block here. So in addition to using a notifier to show an alert message, we're going to look at the notifier, and this time we'll look at the log feature. The log feature has a kind of useful, so I'm going to log it as an error because you can control what level of log to show, and errors is kind of always going to show as opposed to information. So we'll specify the same string, okay? This is not the best way to do it because it's recomputing the join operation, but I could have used a local variable to store the value and then reuse it, but I'm just going to use this method here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and rebuild the app and then re-upload it.
What are you trying to do with log error?
I want to try out the feature called log error,
Yeah.
and then but I want to show you guys how to see that log error
Oh, okay.
because
We talked through it last time, but it was complicated.
well, we never really did it last
Yeah,
time.
we didn't do it. You just
Yeah.
talked through it. That's why I
Yep. Okay. So we'll replace the app. I'll show you this part, and then oops, that's not the right one. There we go. So we are just reinstalling the app here, which will close the app that is already running, and then the new one is now available. Okay, so I'm gonna click this, start the app, do the same thing, and this time we'll just enter some random text, click OK, and this part still works, okay? But where's the log? Where's the log? I don't see the log. Well, you don't see the log because the log is not visible for the most part. So on the emulator itself, you can go to system log messages and stuff like that and actually visualize the log. But you can also, on the command line on this side, you can also utilize ADB, I think it's called logcat, as a command. And you can see this message here.
What did you just type?
Logcat. Yep. And it's ongoing too. So right now, if I do this one more time, you can see, how, if I pop up the keyboard, it will give me a log entry like that. And then if I press OK, then this time we'll see you just typed YFIKHG. Okay, there we go. So this is a really interesting way to log messages for debugging purposes, because this one, is a ongoing file, which means you can use tools to process this and filter out only the messages that you want to see. Okay, so the other messages are probably useless to you. Okay, keyboard is now hidden. I don't need to know that. Thank you. Okay. The form, on global layout, different parent equals to blah, 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 blah. I probably don't need to know that either, okay? But if you know what kind of string you are sending to the log file, you can search for that and filter out everything else. Yep.
But in general, you would want the log error to record errors, like
Yeah.
potentially, right? And
Yep.
so the way you have it set up is you're just demonstrating it. I understand, but how would you set it up where it would grab an error? Like you have to attach it to every time, every little series of blocks at the end.
Nope. Nope. Okay, let me show you. I'm gonna Control C to stop it. So you have several options when you use the log feature. You can log it as error. You can log it as info. You can also log it as warning. It's just classified slightly differently, so that you can do pre-filtering when you say logcat.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is hard to ask. Like
let
far as
me.
I understand. Be- like the way it's set up, you're dragging a block over. It's like you know what the warning is gonna be, and that's why you put it there.
Okay, let me show you this then.
You see what I'm? Am I asking
Okay,
it correctly?
so let me put something over here that is kind of specific. Okay, so let's say this is really an error. Okay, so we'll say error in all uppercase um, and that. Okay, so you can probably just imagine that this is going to change how it's displaying, right? Okay, so we'll switch back to this and also the emulator. Um, oh, in the wrong screen. So we'll go back and do a logcat again, but this time I'll show you a little bit more advanced, Linux command line, stuff. I am doing what we call a pipe. So this vertical bar is a pipe, and what it does is it will take the output of one command and serve it as the input to the next command. So the first command is something that we have seen already. Okay, all it does is to keep track of all the log messages from the Android device, which includes the ones from your app, from the system, from everywhere. Okay, I don't need to know most of those. Okay, but I want to focus on the one that says error. So what grep is doing? Grep is a common command line program in Linux, and I think in some Windows they might have a similar command as well. Okay, so what it does is it ignores everything except for the lines that contain, in this case, ERR, OR, all uppercase. So this way I can filter out everything else and only focus on the ones that I need to know.
I mean, yeah, I'm not asking correctly. I get that. I
Okay.
guess what I'm saying is, on the blocks,
Mm-hmm.
you're still telling it it's an error, but it's not an error. So when like right now the way you have it set up is
You
it's
can
always gonna write a line that says error whenever you run the program.
you
No
can
matter
change
what you
it.
type in the box, right? So it's
Yes.
not really an error. So I'm trying to figure out how do you run it like where it's actually grabbing errors. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I don't want.
Somebody else
Yeah,
follow?
he wants to know like how to make the error thing actually work when he has an error and have it set up to like, display his real errors that he has. Like if you messed up the program right now, you messed
Mm-hmm.
stuff wrong.
Or
How do you make it so that log error actually
yeah, because
shows
right
the
now
error?
it's just gonna show you every single time you click on that button and you type in something there, it's gonna write error to your log. But that's not
Mm-hmm.
an error. That's 100% of the time. It's
Oh,
writing a
okay. So
line
you're
where
talking about real errors.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. How do you report real errors? And the answer is there's no way, because if your program has a division by zero, it will just crash out and say that there's a division by zero on the screen. It might have a log message according to that too. We can give it a try.
Well, okay, but in general, as a programmer, you would have to predict what the potential error. For example,
Mm-hmm.
like you require it has to be a string, but the person puts a number in,
Mm-hmm.
and you would have to like predict that and say this is not a string, and then you add that error
Right.
call almost on. You should put it on a lot of things, and essentially, like
Can
if
I-
there's
You're
potential.
debugging like if else statements, it could be good. to
Kind of,
put in
yeah.
there,
That's
Can I answer your
Yeah.
question? Okay, because I've been a programmer for 39 years.
Okay. Go
Every
ahead.
single error message you have to be precise. You have to check for it and then print a unique message that makes sense to that person. Every single thing you could think of. And even if you do get everything, you could do an else and just say you just got an error. Check your
Yes,
stuff.
that's what I was assuming, but I wanted to make sure that it's how it
It's
is.
the
So like,
programming. This computer does exactly what you say it can't. Yes.
But what you're saying is, what if you have an error that you did not anticipate? So your code did not anticipate it, but it just happened. So what is that? How is that going to be reported? So it all depends on what kind of error we're dealing with. Like division by zero is probably going to crash the program out. Okay. Does it give you a log? Does it give you an entry in the log? We can test it to find out. Okay. I do not know. You guys want to find out?
yeah.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
cool.
Sure. Okay, so this would be a good. This is a good opportunity to look into what we call a local variable. So we can now, initialize local variable 2. And this is the really cool thing is you can snap this here and then put the entire block inside here. So we'll go ahead and, make a local variable called bad, okay? Because we're going to do something bad, okay? And the one thing that we're going to do is going to do a division by 0. So we put a division block here. The first number doesn't really matter. It can be any number, but whatever we're dividing it by 0. So that has to be bad, right? So we'll duplicate this block and then stash it over here. And this one can be non-zero. I'll say 100. And we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm forcing the program to have a runtime error that I did not catch intentionally. And I want to see how it is going to be reported.
And just real quick, you grabbed the initialize local bad
From variables.
Okay.
Yep.
I
So
can't see the colors on that sometimes.
oh, okay. All right.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and build this. And then switch to here and switch to here. It's going to pop up a message to ask me where to save it to, so I know when it's done. That's taking a little long. Actually, it's reporting the incident to the NSA. This incident will be reported to the NSA. You just named a variable bad. Oh, okay, wrong one. Reinstall. So this is what I'm talking about. Use the up-down arrow key to select which command to repeat, which is a really handy feature. All right. Okay, so it's almost done. All right, so it's now reinstalled, and I just want to look at the entire logcat without any filtering. And then we start the app. Yep, it does a lot of stuff, And then we go to test this. Doesn't matter what I'm entering because what we are focusing on this time is how is it going to deal with the division by 0 error. Okay, so I press the enter key, and it has error 3200 trying to divide 0, and then the alert message. But what we want to know is right here. Okay, is the division by 0 error reported here? So the answer is yes, it actually got reported here. So these 3 lines, this is reporting the division by 0 error. So it's reporting form screen 1, has an error that have just occurred. So at least it points you to which form or which screen in the app. It reports the error number is 3200. Component type is screen 1, so it's basically coming from screen 1. But it doesn't give you any additional information. Yep, go ahead.
Function name equals division. That might be a clue, right?
Correct. But it doesn't tell you where it is in the blocks the division of 0 is. Yep, which is kind of unlike text programming where it can report back a function name, a line number, and stuff like that. This one has no line number, right? Yep.
Are you able to put a breakpoint?
Nope, there are no breakpoints, unfortunately, in this type of block type programming.
So the log errors are kind of to like put your own little note message to kind of clarify what you think the error might be or where it might be.
Yep. So it gives you some clue, but not entirely, pointing to exactly where the problem
Once
is.
you know there's an error, then you start putting the log messages into the if-else's.
Yep.
And then whichever error pops up, it's that spot.
Yep. So you have to systematically test your program to find out where the problem is.
So it's like a useful pointer when you do have errors to figure out which spot to
Yeah. And
stop it.
I did just notice though when you started asking about breakpoints, there is a also close string break under control. Those don't work that way. Like you couldn't throw them in there just to have a breakpoint.
Okay, so where do you find that?
Under control at the bottom of the list.
Under control.
You can actually close the application too.
Yes, but that's still not going to tell you where it is.
It's not.
Yeah.
Even if you put a breakpoint in the middle.
No, this break is not a breakpoint. Okay, if you read it, it's breaking out of a loop. So it's the same thing as a break statement in C, C++, and Java, which is not a very good idea. Yep. Yep.
How do you get, in order to get a list of all the various commands,
Mm-hmm.
are you able to do that?
You can probably look up, just App Inventor Blocks.
Okay.
It might give you like an exhaustive list of all the blocks. But I just I don't remember anything. I just kind of get an idea, general idea of where it should be, and then search.
Right, I just wanted something so I could print it because I'm a visual person and I could get
Um.
commands on that.
Okay.
So that's why I like creating like a
Okay.
Bible for myself.
Okay. So if you look up App Inventor Blocks, built-in blocks, I think this is probably an exhaustive list. So it has all the. So it gives you only a list of control blocks. So you don't get one massive one. So if you want to get one, gigantic list, you probably have to kind of do some copy and pasting. Yeah, but it does give you like individual blocks like that.
Now, how did you get there?
I just Google searched.
Okay, now I wanted to see which one you did. That.
Okay. So I did a Google search on App Inventor Blocks, and then on the first link I click on it, and then it gives you a list of the major categories of blocks. Then I click on control blocks, and that gives you a long list of all the control blocks. So if you click on variables, it will give you a long list of all the variable blocks. But there's no one single list of all the different blocks. You just have to kind of make it your own. Make your own.
And then from here you listed like the control blocks.
Click on control blocks to list all the control blocks.
Yeah.
Click on logic blocks to list all the logic blocks.
Okay.
So that will give you kind of like an exhaustive list of all the available blocks.
Right. Thank you.
All right. So are we good so far? Okay. So let's go ahead and check out the mod operator, okay? Because you need that in order to get your homework assignment done. So under math, okay, so it has a modulo of something, okay? So we'll drag this one out and then hover our mouse pointer over that. It modulo of, remainder of, quotient of. So what we need is remainder of a division. So why is that useful? Because if you want to find out whether a number is a factor of another number, you need division. But in that division, the quotient is useless. It's the remainder that is useful. Okay? I'll give you an example. Is 4 a factor of 15? And all of you will go like, of course it's not. But how do we use the remainder to check that? So you basically specify, I want to know what is the remainder of 15 divided by 4. 15 divided by 4 has a remainder of 3. Okay? But I don't even care what is it 1 or 2 or 3. I just need to know whether it is 0 or not. Because if the remainder is a 0 after a division, then what we call the divisor is a factor of what we call the dividend. Is that okay? So this is the block that you need for the GCF assignment. Are we good so far? Okay. I think there's actually a way to run the block without the other stuff. Let me see if that works. I vaguely remember that. I could be wrong. So we'll put a 0 here, and we'll change that, right? We'll change this to a 4, change this to a 15, and let me see if I can run this block here. So it says add external collapse disable. Do it. And it doesn't do a single thing because I'm not doing anything with the result. That's why. All right. Well, if that is the case,
Where did you put the Julie at?
it's a right click. So give me one chance here. See if I can pop this up. Oh no, that's not going to work because I don't have the emulator connected. So it's not going to work. Never mind. Scratch that.
Yeah, just say finish that, right?
Yeah, you could do that. We could do that. And then print it out. Yeah, we could do that. But so that is the general idea. So are we okay so far? Yep.
That's div dividing, right? Isn't that really good for categorizing, like, I mean not categorizing, but organizing like lists and things too? You can rearrange the div dividing, the remainder division.
The remainder, is it good for?
Oh, like organizing columns of data like on a list.
Yes, it can be useful for that purpose too. Yep.
I love how they use two different dividing symbols.
Right. So,
Same program.
well, this is just normal division. So if you look up here, it says it returns the quotient of two numbers, but you can also get the same thing from here if you specify the quotient of a division.
No, I'm just saying like the symbol between 15 and 4. Like
Oh.
they're using two different ones.
Oh, the slash versus the actual division symbol? Yeah. Well, this is one thing that you can do when you have a block type of programming because you don't need to enter on the keyboard. On the keyboard, there's no, math division symbol. So a slash, has to do it.
So are you able to do what's called round up or round down?
Rounding is, you have to look it up in the math blocks. So I think it does have rounding.
Is that the word round?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it has rounding, and rounding you can take the floor, ceiling. So you have your square root, absolute, negation, log, exponent, round, ceiling, and floor. So you have a whole bunch of math functions supported.
What's ceiling and floor?
The ceiling of a number is the smallest integer that is greater than or equal to the value. The floor is the greatest integer that is less than or equal to the value.
So it's not like in a list.
Hmm?
You can't use that in a list. Like
In a list?
The ceiling of a range or the floor of a range.
No. If you have a list, you can check out the number of items in a list.
But that wouldn't help you pull the smallest number in a list.
No. No. It does not do that. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to throw that away. But are we okay so far with the use of notifier? All right. So let's check out loops. Okay. So we'll do something on loops now. Well, let's make another app. We'll do an app that deals with multiplication, but we'll do it the simple way. So what is 3 times 4? We'll add 3 4 times. Okay, so we're going to do it the simple way, and the idea is to use it to illustrate, how to use loops. So this is my new app, and by the way, you can change the caption of screen 1. So if you go to properties of the screen, you can go to the title. So instead of it reading as screen 1, you can change the title to, well, in this case, multiplication. Okay. So in multiplication, we need 2 numbers, and then it will give me the result. Right? So how do you want to enter the numbers? Because we can use text boxes, we can use the text input dialog box, we can use, we can even use a slider. Huh?
So get it from the time.
Get it from the time.
Are you
Okay.
able to do it where you allow the person to enter two numbers in the screen?
I want the end user to enter two numbers for multiplication purposes. Two text boxes? Okay, we'll go for the the one that makes the most sense, right? Um, okay, we can do it side by side. Now, if you want it to be side by side, you will need a layout control here, and this is going to be a horizontal arrangement because you want it to be side by side. So this is the first one, and I just need to know how many things can I have. Oh, it's going to be automatic. All right, so we can go back to user interface and then put another text box next to it. There we go. So we have side by side, and we also want to limit these to just numbers because we know they should not be text. So with each one we can specify numbers only, and then we go back to the other one and specify numbers only also. And then we need a button to trigger the operation. So we drag a button, and we'll change the label of the button to say multiply. And that would be our screen, okay? Nothing fancy, just that. So we go to blocks. There's only one event that I need to handle, which is the clicking of the button. So here we go. All right. So there are a few things, okay? First of all, I need to get the value of the first text box and then the value of the second text box, and then I need a local variable to keep track of the product, okay? So I need a few local variables. So we go to variables, and then we just say we're going to initialize a few variables. Well, this only gives me one. If you have multiple variables that you need to deal with, you can click on the little gearbox thing over here, the blue thing, and then you can just say, I have a few more variables. So you can just kind of drag and drag like that. And then you can go back and change the names of the variables. So the first one, I can change this one to say product. The second one, I can change it to be the first number, which I would call X, and then the second one is called Y. Okay, and then you can also do the initialization. So in this case, I can initialize X to the content of the first text box. So we go to text box 1, go down to the text property of text box 1, and then drag it and then snap it in place here. Because we limit the text box to only hold numbers, so we know it's not going to be text information. And then we go to text box 2. So I'm going to duplicate this block, plug it in place, change it to text box 2. So now we have these two initialized. And then we go back to the product. So we want to initialize the product to 0. So 0 it is. There we go. The next thing we need to do now is to say, okay, so how do we do the calculation? Well, we want to add x, y many times. Okay, that's the general idea. Okay, so as long as y is non-zero, I want to keep adding x to product. Is that okay? This is how elementary schoolers, do multiplication. When you ask them, what is 3 times 7? They would say, okay, here's 7. Okay, now add another 7 to it. We have 14. Now we add another 7 to it. We have 21. So we're going to emulate that particular method. Is that okay? Okay. So we need a loop because this way we kind of need to figure out, okay, are we done yet? Are we done yet? If not, we have something else to do. So we look at control because a loop is a control structure. And we have a whole lot of selections here. So I'm going to explain, which one and why they're different and which one we should be using. The first one for each number from blah to blah by blah is It only works if you know exactly where you're starting from, where you're ending, and also what is the value in between those steps. Okay, if you know basic programming, okay, this corresponds to a basic for loop, where you can specify the start value, the end value, and also how many or what is the value to skip between iterations. Okay, kind of handy and flexible. The second one only works on a list, which we haven't talked about, so I'm going to skip that one for now. The third one is the most general version of a loop, where as long as the test condition, which is something that is either true or false, is true, we perform the whatever is in the do portion. So it's the same thing as a while do loop, in C, C++, Java, and basically all modern programming languages. So are we good so far differentiating these three types of repetition blocks? Okay. I'm going to scroll down just in case I missed some additional blocks here. Oh, there's do result, which is not a loop. Okay, so a do block in App Inventor is not the same thing as a do while loop in C and C++. Okay, so it's not the same thing. It's not iteration. And I think that's it. Okay, there are no more loops, so there are only these loops over here. We could do it with this one. We could also do it with a while loop. Which one do you want me to do? The first one, okay? The first one is the easy one, right? So the first one is the easy one. Huh?
Leave it to everyone. What do you guys want to do?
That one's fun.
Well, we can do it first with this one, and then we can then use the other one, right? Okay, so I don't want to start with 1. I do want to start with 1, but I don't want to end with 5. The value I want to end with is going to be y. I do want to only increase by 1 for each iteration, okay? So if y is 3, then the number, this value here, is going to go, the first iteration is going to be 1, 2, and then 3. Yes?
Do we want to use the text box or do we want to use the actual?
Oh, the variable x. You're correct. The text box would work too, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having the local variable. So, huh?
You don't want to throw it away because you just took it from.
Oh, okay. It's not thrown away yet because I did not aim. Okay, this is the fun part of graphical programming is you kind of have to aim. All right, put it back here. So if you want to get a local variable, you hover over the variable that you want to get, and then you click on the get box, okay? And now we are going from 1 to y, stepping by 1. So within the body of the for loop, we just have to add x to product, okay? Which sounds a lot easier than it would look like in graphical programming. Because in graphical programming, the first thing we need to do is a variable block, because we are changing the value of something. So it's a set block. The one that we are changing is product. So this is the really cool part of graphical programming is it will only list valid choices. So it cannot have a little typo that refers to a variable that does not exist. Okay? And the drop-down box of a set block would also include global variables. Anything that is applicable, it will be in the drop-down list, which is kind of cool until you have like 20 or 30 variables. Then you wish you could type. You could just type it in. We want to set product to the sum of product and x here. So we go to the math block, we grab an addition block, and then we grab product, the current value of product, and then the current value of x. So that's how you increase product by x for each iteration. Is that okay? So by the time we get out of this loop, we would have the answer in product.
So let's saying starting from 1, you would want to start from 0, I guess.
You don't want to start from 0 because if you start from 0, then you have one extra iteration.
Okay, so starting from 1, and you're only going to do it the amount of times that y is set to.
Yep.
You're not going to skip any. Is that what that's what the by?
Correct. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you specify by as 2, then it's going to go 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on.
Okay.
And by the way, the recommendation is do not directly change number. So in this case, we don't even use number because it's not useful to us. But in some other type of code, you can use number, which is basically just going 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But the recommendation is do not ever change number to something else because it is an internal variable and it doesn't handle, changing the value very well. Yep.
But you can use it as like a counter pretty usefully, right?
You can read it as a counter, but you should not reset it to any value.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so we are all done here, but there's no way to report back the value. So there are several ways to do it. If I'm super duper lazy and I really don't want to drag another component in, I can use the caption or the title of the screen to indicate the answer. Now that's an awful way as a user interface, but it can be done.
Okay, now I'm curious how.
Oh, it's easy peasy. Okay, so you just go to screen and then you go down to the title property, I think. Yep, there we go. And then you can change it. See, even the title of the screen can be changed. And you want to do it after the for each block, because otherwise, it's well, I'm not even sure whether you will see the update because I think you only see the end result. So you change the title of the screen to the product. So I don't even bother with a message and say the product of the multiplication is. Okay, because the whole point is to illustrate how to use a loop. Okay, so I'm not going to focus on the user interface part of it. Okay, and I think it's done. Okay, sounds good to me. So let's go ahead and build this app and download it. Hopefully the emulator has enough storage space. Remember last time we had to uninstall something to get us enough space. So maybe I should do it first. So we'll go back and uninstall this. Very untimely. Okay. Oh, okay. It kept the state of the drag motion, so that's good. So let's see. Is it actually uninstalled? Nope. It's still here. Yeah, the drag doesn't work, right? Well, we'll see whether we can install this one without, let's see whether we have enough space to do it. All right, so this time I do have to kind of change the name of the file because now we have another program. It's multiplication. Okay, there we go. There we go. Let's see if it complains. Woohoo! All right, that works. So now we go here, and multiplication is right here. And we'll give it 2 numbers to multiply. So we can specify, 3 and 4, for instance. So we'll specify 3 over here, and 4 over here. And then click multiply, and then the multiplication, the title of the screen itself, should be changed to the product. Is this the best way to reflect the answer of a calculation? No. But I was lazy. I didn't want to drag a new component in just to show the result. So are we good?
You just got an alert saying low on space.
Oh, low on space?
Figure out a way to upgrade your
Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
Well, remember the emulator, no, I'm already abusing the emulator because the emulator typically only wants to run AI companion. So it was never intended to install additional apps. But I know it does have a SD card,
Yeah, I've seen it.
emulated SD card, so I can potentially just kind of bump up the capacity of the SD card. I know how to
I
do
don't
that
have the
sort of
same
thing.
issue as mine. I know it's just burnt.
Yeah, so I think we can do that. Because I think the SD card, because I know how to use QEMU, which is the emulator on which this emulator is built. So there are options to change a disk system and emulate a disk system to be bigger. If this is the route you want to take, like you want to use emulation, um, but you do not want to use a real device, one way to do it, if you're installing, if it is your own computer, is to install Android Studio. Okay, because Android Studio comes with like the latest and greatest emulator, and you can get all the images. You can get everything up to the latest Android version.
Can't you run like any version of Android you want with
Yep.
it and satisfies you?
You can emulate in most of the devices too. So especially the Google devices.
Yeah.
So if you say I want to emulate a Nexus 5, okay, which is a really old device, they have that.
Yeah.
I think you can emulate up to the pixels, which is kind of cool. Okay, and you can control how much space you want to allocate for the SD card and
So you
lots
can
of.
run all the different operating systems too, like
Yep.
8.1 and all that.
Yep. Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But it's kind of an extra step, for those of you who do not have your own computer. If you have your own computer and you got space, to install Android Studio, hey, by all means, if you want to do that. But if you're using the lab computer, I don't think I can install Android Studio in a portable way, like what you can run out of a flash card. So if you're running your program out of the lab machines, this is kind of the only option that we got, short of getting a real device for $75. And by the way, it's still running really well. The Samsung that I bought,
You caught a lot of Pokemon.
well, my wife used that to
So
to
yeah,
play Pokemon Go.
yeah.
So she has to tether it to
You
your
see
to
the
her.
guy that has like a bicycle
Do
that
the
has like
hotspot.
Yeah,
20 of them on a bike rack and he just rides around.
or Uber.
I don't remember know the guy's
Someone's
name,
paying
but
him to.
Somebody got caught, driving Uber and playing Pokemon Go at the same time.
oh really?
Yeah,
How big
yeah.
the car?
The
No, it's just
passenger,
some guy where he
the
just,
passenger,
Oh,
he
the
just
passenger.
the passenger says, "I want to live."
one star.
It's like it's okay. It's a GPS. It can do it.
Yeah, because I suppose you can use like three different fingers
Why are you
to
trying
to
to
throw
do that?
three different balls at the same time.
Sorry, my GPS doesn't have street names. It has Pokemon.
So who am I picking up? Oh yeah, right, Charizard.
Yeah.
I know where the gyms are. That would be super funny. All right, so I think we got what we need to go over today. So next week we'll get to lists. Okay, there's nothing to kind of read ahead of me, just because it's much better. It's just a whole lot easier for me to illustrate using App Inventor as opposed to you guys reading something that's really kind of abstract, and then try to figure out what it means. So for the rest of this week and up to Monday, just kind of focus on the two homework assignments, especially the project. Kind of give yourself plenty of time to really kind of go over in your mind. What do I really want to do? We got about 12, more than 12 weeks, maybe about 12 weeks left. So that's plenty of time, okay? And then based on what you guys propose, I can adjust the content of the class or at least the ordering of the topics so that I can give you guys, as much of a head start as possible, okay? So we'll go with that.
So for now, the only short-term assignment was the color one.
The color one is due today.
Okay, I turned it in.
Okay.
Is there
No.
another one now?
Yeah, there are two.
Oh,
There are
okay.
two assignments, due next Wednesday.
Oh,
So if they're due in 1 week, but there are two. One is actual app programming, the GCF, your greatest common factor, and then the other one is just a project proposal where you have to write about it.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yep.
So you want to have it storyboarded when it's the project.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, just a general idea is fine.
Cool. Alright.
Yep. So I'll see some of you over at the lab, and if I don't see you, have a nice weekend.
You too.
Thanks.